My name is Sarah Mitchell. I'm 26 years old, and I've spent my entire life being called the stupid one by my own parents, while they showered my sister with praise and opportunities. Before I continue this story, let me know where you're watching from in the comments below. The words still echo in my mind like a broken record. Sarah, you're just not as bright as your sister. Victoria has the brains in this family. Why can't you be more like your sister? I heard these phrases so many times growing up that I almost started believing them. Almost. It started when we were children. Victoria was 2 years older, and from the moment she could read, our parents treated her like a prodigy. She got straight A's without trying, won spelling bees, dominated science fairs. I was the one who struggled with math, who had to read chapters twice to understand them, who never quite measured up. But what my parents never saw, what they never bothered to notice, was that I had something Victoria didn't. I had determination. I had grit. And I had an ability to see through people's facades that would eventually become my greatest weapon. Our childhood home in Westchester was comfortable, but not extravagant. My father, Robert Mitchell, was a successful corporate lawyer who built his practice from the ground up. My mother, Catherine, had been a nurse before becoming a stay-at-home mom. They were good people, or so I thought. They provided for us, sent us to decent schools, made sure we had everything we needed. Except they gave Victoria something extra, something I craved desperately. Their approval, their pride, their unconditional love. I remember the day Victoria got accepted to Harvard with a full academic scholarship. I was 16, sitting at the kitchen table doing homework when the thick envelope arrived. My mother screamed with joy. My father opened a bottle of champagne at 3 p.m. They called everyone they knew. Grandma Martha, my father's mother, was the first person they called. She was so proud, they said. The Mitchell family was going to have a Harvard graduate. "What about Sarah?" Grandma Martha had asked on speakerphone. I could hear her frail voice from across the kitchen. "Oh, Sarah's doing fine," my mother said dismissively. "She's getting B's and C's. We're just hoping she can get into a state school." I'll never forget the look Victoria gave me that day. It wasn't cruel exactly, but it was pitying. Like she felt sorry for me for being born inferior. That look ignited something inside me. I didn't want pity. I wanted respect. And I was going to earn it, even if it killed me. What my parents didn't know, what I never told them, was that I had deliberately been hiding my true capabilities. After years of being compared unfavorably to Victoria, after countless dinner table conversations where my achievements were brushed aside while hers were celebrated, I made a decision. If they were going to treat me like I was stupid anyway, why not use their low expectations to my advantage? Let them underestimate me. Let them think I was struggling. Meanwhile, I would work harder than Victoria ever had, but I would do it quietly, privately, without their knowledge or interference. The truth was, I wasn't struggling at all. Those B's and C's on my report cards, carefully calculated. I would ace tests and then purposely miss questions to bring my grades down to match their expectations. It sounds crazy, I know. But when you grow up in a household where your sister gets a new laptop for getting an A while you get a lecture for getting a B+, you learn to protect yourself. You learn to fly under the radar. While Victoria basked in the spotlight at Harvard, I went to SUNY Binghamton, a state school, just as my mother predicted. They paid my tuition with barely concealed disappointment. "At least you got in somewhere," my father had said when I received my acceptance letter. No champagne, no phone calls, just a resigned sigh, and a reminder that I should be grateful Victoria was doing so well, because it meant the family name meant something. But here's what they didn't know. I wasn't just going to SUNY Binghamton. I was excelling. I was top of my class. I was on the dean's list every single semester. I had chosen to stay close to home, to attend a school they would dismiss, because it allowed me to work multiple jobs without them noticing. I saved every penny. I networked like my life depended on it. And I studied. God, did I study. I majored in political science with a minor in economics. My professors loved me. They wrote me glowing recommendation letters. They encouraged me to apply to law school, and I did. I took the LSAT without telling my parents. I scored in the 99th percentile. I applied to 15 law schools, including Columbia, NYU, and Georgetown. I got into all of them. Columbia offered me a partial scholarship. I accepted immediately. The day I found out, I almost told them. I almost burst into the dining room where they were having dinner with Victoria, who was home for spring break, and announced that their stupid daughter was going to Columbia Law School. But something stopped me. Maybe it was the way my father was looking at Victoria with such pride as she talked about her internship at Goldman Sachs. Maybe it was the way my mother couldn't stop bragging about how Victoria had been invited to join some exclusive Harvard society. Whatever it was, I kept my mouth shut. I realized that revealing my success to them wouldn't change anything. They would find some way to diminish it, to make it about Victoria somehow. So I stayed silent. I told them I was taking a gap year to figure things out. They weren't surprised. "Sarah needs time to mature," my mother told relatives. "She's just not ready for the real world yet." Let them think that. Let them believe their own narrative. Meanwhile, I moved to Manhattan, got a tiny studio apartment in Washington Heights, and started at Columbia Law. Law school was brutal, but I thrived. For the first time in my life, I was in an environment where hard work and intelligence were the only things that mattered. My classmates didn't know me as Victoria's little sister. They knew me as Sarah Mitchell, the woman who could summarize a 100-page case brief in 5 minutes, who could argue both sides of any legal issue with equal conviction, who never backed down from a debate. I specialized in estate law and trusts. It started as genuine interest, but it became something more when I realized how many families destroyed themselves over inheritance disputes, how money brought out the worst in people, how parents played favorites even from beyond the grave. I saw myself in every case, every disinherited child, every forgotten sibling, and I became very, very good at my job. By my 3rd year, I was already being recruited by top firms. I did a summer associate position at Whitmore & Associates, one of Manhattan's most prestigious estate planning firms. They offered me a full-time position before I even graduated. Starting salary, $210,000 a year. More money than my father made after 30 years of practice. I accepted. I passed the New York bar exam on my first try, and I walked into Whitmore & Associates as a first-year associate on a Monday morning in September, ready to prove that the stupid one was anything but. My family still didn't know. To them, I was Sarah, the daughter who took some community college classes and worked random administrative jobs. They never asked for details. They never expressed interest in my life. Every conversation somehow circled back to Victoria. Victoria's promotion at Goldman. Victoria's engagement to Bradley, a hedge fund manager from Connecticut. Victoria's upcoming Harvard Business School graduation. Yes, after Harvard undergrad, Victoria had gone straight to Harvard Business School. Of course she had. 2 Harvard degrees. My parents were beside themselves with pride. They updated their Christmas cards to include, "Our daughter Victoria is getting her MBA from Harvard Business School." I wasn't mentioned. I could have told them the truth at any point. I could have shown up at Thanksgiving dinner in my tailored work suits. Could have casually mentioned the massive cases I was working on. Could have dropped the names of the billionaire clients who trusted me with their family legacies. But I didn't. Because I had learned something important. Revenge is a dish best served cold. And I was patient. I could wait for the perfect moment. That moment came 3 months ago, when Grandma Martha passed away. Martha Mitchell had been the one person in my family who never treated me differently. She loved both her granddaughters equally. She sent us both cards on our birthdays with $20 bills tucked inside. She asked about our lives with genuine interest. She was the one who had noticed years ago that I wasn't as stupid as my parents claimed. "You're a smart cookie, Sarah," she had whispered to me at a family dinner when I was 19. "I see it in your eyes. You're playing a long game, aren't you?" I had just smiled and squeezed her hand. She never pressed for details. But from that day on, there was an understanding between us. Grandma Martha had been wealthy. Not just comfortable, but genuinely wealthy. Her late husband, my grandfather, had made a fortune in real estate development in the 1960s and 70s. When he died 20 years ago, he left everything to Martha. She lived modestly in a beautiful brownstone in Brooklyn, but her assets were substantial. My father, her only child, had always assumed he would inherit everything when she passed. The funeral was at a Catholic church in Brooklyn. I sat in the back, wearing a simple black dress from H&M, while Victoria sat in the front row in head-to-toe designer black, dabbing her eyes with a monogrammed handkerchief. My parents flanked her, the perfect grieving family. I was an afterthought, the quiet one who nobody needed to comfort. After the burial, there was a reading of the will at Grandma Martha's lawyer's office. Nothing unusual, my father assured everyone. Just a formality. He had been Martha's power of attorney for the last 5 years of her life. He had helped her manage her affairs. He knew exactly what was in the will because he had helped her update it several times. That should have been my first red flag. But at the time, I was still processing my grief. Grandma Martha had been my anchor, the one person who believed in me. I wasn't thinking about money or inheritance. I was thinking about how I would never again get to have tea with her and listen to her stories about old Brooklyn. The will was straightforward, the lawyer explained. Martha Mitchell's estate, valued at approximately $14 million, was to be divided between her son Robert and his 2 granddaughters. The primary asset was a historic mansion in Brooklyn Heights, worth approximately $13 million, plus various financial assets totaling another $1 million. But here's where it got interesting. According to the will the lawyer read, the mansion was to go to Robert Mitchell, my father. The remaining $1 million was to be split between Victoria and me, $500,000 each. However, the lawyer continued, Mrs. Mitchell expressed her wish that upon Robert Mitchell's passing, the mansion would go to his children in equal shares. My father nodded solemnly, as if this was exactly what he expected. Victoria looked pleased but not surprised. My mother squeezed my father's hand supportively, and I sat there, feeling like something was off, but not quite able to put my finger on what. The days after the funeral were a blur. I threw myself into work, taking on extra cases, staying at the office until midnight. My senior partner, Michael Whitmore, noticed. "Sarah, you need to take some time," he said one evening, finding me in my office at 11 p.m. "Losing a grandparent is hard. There's no shame in grieving." "I grieve by working," I replied, not looking up from the estate dispute case I was reviewing. "It helps me not think about it." Michael was quiet for a moment. Then he said something that changed everything. "You know, in my 30 years of practice, I've seen a lot of families torn apart by inheritance disputes, especially when one family member has power of attorney and access to change wills. Just be careful. Make sure everything was legitimate." I looked up at him then. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying that your grandmother's will was suspiciously simple for someone with that much wealth, and I'm saying that you're one of the best estate lawyers I've ever worked with. Trust your instincts." That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about Grandma Martha's will, about how my father had been her power of attorney, about how he had helped her update it several times, about how Victoria got the same amount I did, despite being the favorite granddaughter. That wasn't like my grandmother. She believed in equal treatment, yes, but she also had strong opinions about how money should be distributed. She had always talked about keeping the family home in the family, about making sure both granddaughters were taken care of. The next morning, I did something I probably shouldn't have done. I used my firm's resources to pull public records on my grandmother's estate. What I found made my blood run cold. There wasn't just one will. There were multiple wills on file. The first one, dated 15 years ago, left everything in a trust for her granddaughters, with Robert as trustee but not beneficiary. The second one, dated 10 years ago, left the mansion to be held in trust for Victoria and me, with us taking ownership when the youngest turned 30. The third one, dated 5 years ago, right around when my father became power of attorney, left everything to Robert, with the understanding he would do right by his daughters. And then there was a fourth will, filed just 3 months before Grandma Martha's death. This one was different. This one left specific bequests: the mansion to Victoria, the financial assets split between Robert and me, and a handwritten note that said, "Victoria has always been the responsible one. She will take care of the family home." My grandmother would never have written that. She loved us equally. She would never have played favorites the way my parents did. and the handwriting in that note looked nothing like her shaky, elderly script. It looked calculated, practiced. I had seen enough forged documents in my career to recognize the signs. The too perfect signature, the lack of natural hand tremors that elderly people develop, the phrases that didn't match her normal speech patterns. This will was fake. I was sure of it. But I couldn't just accuse my own father of forgery without proof. I needed evidence. Real evidence. The kind that would hold up in court. So I did what any good lawyer would do. I hired a private investigator. His name was Thomas Harrison, and he came highly recommended by one of my colleagues who specialized in fraud cases. He was expensive, but I had been saving money for years. I could afford it. "I need you to investigate my father," I told him at our first meeting in a coffee shop in Midtown. "I believe he forged my grandmother's will to benefit himself and my sister." Thomas didn't even blink. "Tell me everything," I told him. I showed him copies of all 4 wills. I explained the timeline. I described my grandmother's personality, her values, her relationship with us. I shared my suspicions. "I'll need about 6 weeks," Thomas said. "I'll need to interview people, pull records, maybe get a handwriting expert involved. Can you get me samples of everyone's handwriting? Your father's, your sister's, your grandmother's?" "I can get my grandmother's. I have letters she sent me over the years. My father's will be harder, but I can try. My sister's..." I paused. "Actually, I might have some old birthday cards." "Perfect. Also, I'll need names of witnesses who were present when the will was allegedly signed. And I'll need access to your grandmother's medical records from her last year. If she had dementia or was medicated, that could invalidate the will, even if it is genuine." I felt a flicker of hope. She did have some memory issues toward the end. "Then we have a case. Give me 6 weeks." Those 6 weeks were the longest of my life. I went to work every day, argued cases about other people's inheritance disputes, and thought about my own family's deceit. I avoided my parents' calls, made excuses for why I couldn't come to Sunday dinners. I needed distance while Thomas did his work. Meanwhile, my family was planning. Victoria's Harvard Business School graduation was scheduled for late May. My parents were over the moon. They had rented a luxury apartment in Cambridge for the week, invited dozens of relatives, planned an elaborate graduation party. And my father had announced he had a special surprise for Victoria at the graduation ceremony. I received a formal invitation in the mail, the kind with calligraphy and gold trim. "You are cordially invited to celebrate Victoria Mitchell's graduation from Harvard Business School." At the bottom, in my mother's handwriting, "Sarah, please try to dress nicely for once. This is an important day for our family." I almost laughed. Almost. Thomas called me 5 days before the graduation. "I've got everything you need. Meet me at my office tomorrow morning." I took a personal day from work and met Thomas in his small office in Queens. He had a thick folder waiting for me on his desk. "Your instincts were correct," he said without preamble. "The 4th will is a forgery." I had 3 handwriting experts examine it independently. All 3 confirmed that the signature was traced, probably from one of the earlier wills. The handwriting in the note doesn't match your grandmother's writing from the same time period. And here's the kicker. The witnesses who supposedly signed the will, one of them died 2 years before the will was dated. The other one, when I tracked her down, said she never witnessed any will. She was your grandmother's nurse, and she remembers your father asking her to sign some paperwork, but she thought it was medical forms. My hands were shaking as I opened the folder. Inside were expert reports, witness statements, copies of the forged will with annotations pointing out the inconsistencies. It was damning evidence. "There's more," Thomas continued. "I pulled your grandmother's medical records. In her last 6 months, she was on heavy pain medication for cancer that your family apparently kept quiet. She was barely lucid most days. There's no way she could have executed a will during that period with full mental capacity. Any will signed during that time could be challenged on grounds of lack of testamentary capacity. My father had power of attorney," I said quietly. "He controlled who saw her. He controlled her medical decisions." "Exactly. And I found something else interesting. Your father made several large withdrawals from your grandmother's accounts in her last year. $200,000 in total, all marked as household expenses and medical care. But I checked with her facility and her doctors. Her care was covered by insurance and her normal pension. So where did that money go? I thought about Victoria's engagement ring, a massive diamond that Bradley supposedly bought. I thought about my parents' recent renovation of their Westchester home. I thought about the new Tesla my father had been driving. He was stealing from her, I whispered. I can't prove that in court without more evidence, but yes, that's my assessment. Now, here's my advice. You have enough evidence to contest the will. You could go to the police and press charges for forgery and possible elder abuse. But if you do that, you need to be prepared for your family to turn on you completely. This will destroy your relationship with your parents and probably your sister. I looked at the folder, at the evidence of my father's betrayal. Then I looked up at Thomas. What would you do? He smiled grimly. I'd burn it all down. But I'm vindictive. You need to decide if you can live with the consequences. I thought about Grandma Martha, confused and in pain in her final months, while my father manipulated her finances and forged her signature. I thought about all the years of being called stupid, of being overlooked, of watching my sister get everything while I got nothing. I thought about the 26 years I had spent proving myself to people who would never appreciate me. I can live with it, I said. Thomas handed me a business card. This is the prosecutor I used to work with when I was a cop. He handles white-collar crimes. If you decide to press charges, call him. He'll take your case seriously, especially with this evidence. I took the card. Thank you, Thomas. Send me your final invoice. Already did. But Sarah, be careful. People do desperate things when they're cornered. Your father is a lawyer. He'll fight dirty. So am I replied. And I fight dirtier. The next few days were a chess game. I contacted the prosecutor, a man named David Chen. I showed him everything Thomas had found. He was immediately interested. This is a solid case, he said, reviewing the documents in his office. Forgery, possible elder abuse, embezzlement. I could bring charges tomorrow. But I'm going to be honest with you, Ms. Mitchell. These cases are messy. They take years to prosecute. Your father will hire the best defense attorneys money can buy. Your family will be dragged through the mud. Are you sure you want to do this? I'm sure, I said. But I want timing on my side. Can we wait until after my sister's graduation? I want them all together when this hits. David raised an eyebrow. You want to make a scene? I want justice. And I want them to know exactly who I am before their world comes crashing down. He smiled. I like the way you think. Okay, here's what we'll do. I'll have all the paperwork ready. The day after the graduation, we'll file charges and execute a freeze on the estate assets pending investigation. That'll prevent your father from liquidating or transferring anything. But Ms. Mitchell, if you're going to do this, you need to be prepared for the fallout. Your family will hate you. They already don't respect me, I said. At least this way, they'll fear me. The day of Victoria's graduation dawned bright and clear. Cambridge in May is beautiful, with Harvard Yard full of green leaves and excited students in crimson regalia. I drove up from New York in my modest Honda Civic, wearing a simple navy dress and flats. I looked like what my family expected, plain, unmemorable Sarah, the one who barely made it through state school. I arrived at the ceremony early and found a seat in the back section, far from where my parents and the rest of the family were sitting in the VIP area. They had pulled strings to get those seats, no doubt. I watched as relatives I hadn't seen in years filtered in, all dressed in their finest, all there to celebrate Victoria. My Aunt Diane spotted me and waved. Sarah, come sit with us up front. I shook my head. I'm fine here. Better view. She shrugged and returned to the family section. I saw my mother lean over and say something to her, probably explaining that I preferred to be alone, that I was antisocial, that I had always been the odd one out. The ceremony began. It was long and tedious, full of speeches about leadership and innovation and changing the world. Harvard Business School graduates apparently walked on water and breathed rarefied air. I watched Victoria cross the stage when her name was called, watched her accept her diploma with a brilliant smile, watched my father stand up and cheer while my mother wiped tears from her eyes. Then came the reception on the lawn outside. Tables were set up with champagne and hors d'oeuvres. A string quartet played in the corner. It was elegant and expensive, and exactly the kind of thing my parents loved to be part of. I hung back, nursing a glass of sparkling water, watching my family hold court in the center of the lawn. Victoria was surrounded by admirers, colleagues, professors. My father was telling everyone about the special announcement he had planned for later. My mother was basking in reflected glory. I checked my phone. Thomas Harrison had sent me a text an hour ago. "Package is in your car. Envelope on passenger seat. Good luck." I had asked him to prepare a final document for me. Something I could hand to my family when the moment was right. Something that would make it clear exactly who they had been dealing with all these years. The moment came 2 hours into the reception. My father clinked his champagne glass with a fork, calling for everyone's attention. The crowd quieted. Victoria stood next to him, glowing with happiness. "Friends, family, colleagues," my father began, his voice carrying across the lawn. "Thank you all for being here to celebrate my daughter Victoria's incredible achievement. Harvard Business School. I couldn't be prouder." Applause. Victoria beamed. "But I have an even more special announcement to make today," my father continued. "As many of you know, my mother, Martha Mitchell, passed away recently. She left behind a considerable estate, including a beautiful historic mansion in Brooklyn Heights. This home has been in our family for 50 years. It's worth over $13 million. I felt my jaw clench. Here it comes. After much thought and consultation with my wife, Catherine, I've decided that this mansion, along with a Tesla that my mother wanted someone responsible to have, should go to Victoria." Gasps from the crowd. Victoria's hand flew to her mouth in surprise. Or fake surprise. I couldn't tell anymore. Victoria has always been the responsible one, the successful one, the one who makes this family proud. She has earned this, and so, effective immediately, I'm transferring the deed to the Brooklyn mansion to my daughter Victoria. Happy graduation, sweetheart. The crowd erupted in applause. People rushed forward to congratulate Victoria. My mother was crying happy tears. My father looked like a king dispensing favors to his loyal subjects. And I stood in the back, invisible as always, watching $13 million get handed to my sister like a graduation gift. That's when I saw him. Thomas Harrison, dressed in a dark suit, standing at the edge of the crowd. He caught my eye and nodded toward a quiet area behind one of the buildings. I made my way over, unnoticed in the chaos of congratulations. Thomas handed me a large manila envelope. "Everything you need is in here. The evidence, the prosecutor's contact information, a cease and desist letter I drafted for you to serve on your father, and something extra I thought you might want." "What extra?" He smiled. "The real will. The one your grandmother actually wanted. I found it in her safety deposit box. Your father never knew it existed. She gave a copy to her old lawyer, the one before the guy your father uses. That lawyer died last year, but I tracked down his daughter who had inherited his files. She found it tucked away in storage." My hands trembled as I opened the envelope. Inside were multiple documents, but one stood out. A will, dated 5 years ago, signed and witnessed properly. I read it quickly, my heart pounding. "To my granddaughters, Victoria and Sarah Mitchell, I leave my entire estate in equal shares. The Brooklyn Heights mansion is to be held in trust until the youngest granddaughter reaches the age of 30, at which point it will be sold and the proceeds divided equally. Until that time, both granddaughters may use the property as they see fit. I do this because I love both my granddaughters equally, and I believe in giving them equal opportunities in life. Neither one is more deserving than the other. They are both my heart." There was more, but I couldn't read through my tears. Equal shares, equal opportunities. Neither more deserving than the other. "Your grandmother knew your father was manipulating her," Thomas said softly. "That's why she made sure to give a copy of her real will to her old lawyer. She was protecting you, Sarah." I wiped my eyes. "How do we do this?" "You walk back to that reception. You wait for a moment when you can get your father, mother, and sister together with witnesses around, and you hand your father the envelope. In it is a letter from David Chen, the prosecutor, informing him that he's under investigation for forgery, embezzlement, and elder abuse. There's also a copy of the real will, and a cease and desist order preventing him from transferring any assets from the estate until the investigation is complete. Which means that mansion he just promised Victoria. He can't give it to her. I looked at Thomas, this stranger who had helped me uncover my family's darkest secrets. Why did you help me? Really? He smiled sadly. Because I was the stupid one in my family too. And when I finally proved them wrong, it was the most liberating moment of my life. You deserve that moment, Sarah. You've earned it. I took a deep breath, straightened my shoulders, and walked back to the reception with the envelope clutched in my hand. The celebration was in full swing. Victoria was taking selfies with friends. My parents were accepting congratulations from relatives. Everyone was talking about the mansion, about how lucky Victoria was, about what a generous father Robert Mitchell was. I walked through the crowd, my heart pounding so hard, I thought everyone could hear it. People barely glanced at me. I was used to that. The invisible daughter, the forgettable one, the stupid one. I approached my father from behind as he was talking to my Uncle James about property values in Brooklyn Heights. "Excuse me?" I said quietly. My father turned, looked at me with surprise, as if he'd forgotten I existed. "Sarah, I didn't see you here. Are you enjoying the party? I need to speak with you," I said. "You, Mom, and Victoria. Privately. Now." Something in my tone must have registered because my father's smile faltered. "Is everything all right?" "No," I said simply. "Everything is not all right." My mother appeared at my father's elbow. "Sarah, what's wrong? This is Victoria's day. Can't whatever drama you're having wait?" "Drama?" I almost laughed. "No, Mom, this can't wait. Get Victoria. We need to talk. There's a conference room in that building over there. 5 minutes." Victoria joined us, looking annoyed at being pulled away from her admirers. "What's going on?" "Sarah, if this is about the mansion, I'm sorry you're upset, but Dad made his decision based on who would be more responsible." "More responsible," I repeated. "Right. Let's talk about responsibility." We walked to the empty conference room I had scouted earlier. My parents and Victoria sat on one side of the table. I stood on the other, the envelope in my hands. "Sarah, we don't have time for this," my father said impatiently. "There are guests outside, important people Victoria needs to network with." "I'll make this quick then," I said. I slid the envelope across the table. "Open it." My father frowned but opened the envelope. I watched his face as he pulled out the documents. First confusion, then shock, then pure fear. "What is this?" my mother asked, trying to read over his shoulder. "It's a letter from the district attorney's office," I said calmly. "Informing you, Dad, that you're under investigation for forgery, embezzlement, and elder abuse related to Grandma Martha's estate. It's also a cease and desist order preventing you from transferring any assets from the estate, including the Brooklyn mansion, until the investigation is complete." Victoria grabbed the papers from my father's hands. "This is insane. Sarah, what are you doing? Some kind of sick joke?" "It's not a joke," I said. "Dad forged Grandma's will. The will that was read at the lawyer's office? Fake. Grandma's signature was traced. The witnesses were either dead or didn't actually witness anything. And in Grandma's real will, the one she actually signed with sound mind 5 years ago, she left everything to Victoria and me equally. Not to Dad. Not just to Victoria. To both of us." My mother's face had gone white. "You're lying." "I'm not. Read the documents. I had a private investigator look into everything. I hired handwriting experts. I found the real will. And I contacted the prosecutor's office because what Dad did is illegal. It's forgery. It's fraud. And if he transfers that mansion to Victoria, it's theft." My father stood up so abruptly his chair fell backward. "You ungrateful little bitch. After everything we've done for you." "Everything you've done for me?" I laughed, and it was a harsh sound. "You called me stupid my entire life. You compared me unfavorably to Victoria every single day. You never asked about my life, never cared about my achievements, never treated me like I mattered. And then you stole from your own mother and forged her will to give everything to your favorite daughter. So no, Dad, you haven't done anything for me." "This is absurd," Victoria said, but her voice was shaking. "Grandma wanted me to have the mansion. She told me so herself." "Did she?" I challenged. "When? Be specific, because according to her medical records, she was barely conscious in her final months. So when exactly did she tell you that?" Victoria's mouth opened and closed. She couldn't answer. My father recovered his composure, the lawyer in him taking over. "You can't prove any of this. It's your word against mine. And I'm a respected attorney with 30 years of practice. What are you, Sarah? What have you accomplished that gives you any credibility?" And there it was, the opening I had been waiting for. I smiled. "I'm so glad you asked, Dad. Let me tell you what I've been doing while you all assumed I was floundering in mediocrity." I pulled out my phone and brought up my law firm's website. I turned the screen toward them. "I'm a senior associate at Whitmore & Associates, one of the most prestigious estate planning firms in Manhattan. I specialize in inheritance law and trust disputes. I graduated from Columbia Law School, where I was top 5% of my class. I passed the New York bar exam on my first try, and I make $210,000 a year." The silence in the room was deafening. "You're lying," my mother whispered. "You went to SUNY. You took some community college classes." "No, Mom. I let you believe that because you never bothered to ask. I went to SUNY Binghamton, where I was top of my class. Then I went to Columbia Law. I've been working as an attorney for 3 years now. I handle estates worth hundreds of millions of dollars. I advise billionaires on how to structure their family trusts, and I know fraud when I see it." Victoria was staring at me like she'd never seen me before. "Why didn't you tell us?" "Why would I?" I shot back. "So you could take credit somehow? So Dad could claim he always knew I had potential? So Mom could tell everyone that both her daughters were successful? No. I did this for me, because I needed to prove to myself that I wasn't the stupid one. And I'm not." My father's face was red with rage. "This is blackmail. You're trying to extort us." "It's not blackmail, it's justice. You committed crimes, Dad. You forged a legal document. You stole money from your own mother. And you tried to disinherit me based on a fake will. Those are facts. The evidence is overwhelming. And now you're going to face the consequences." "What do you want?" my mother asked desperately. "Money? You want us to give you money to make this go away?" I shook my head. "I don't want your money. I want what Grandma actually wanted. I want the estate divided equally between Victoria and me, the way Grandma's real will specified. I want Dad to face criminal charges for what he did. And I want all of you to finally see me for who I really am. Not the stupid one. Not the disappointment. I'm Sarah Mitchell, Columbia Law School graduate and estate attorney. I'm successful. I'm intelligent. And I will not be underestimated anymore." My father moved toward me, and I stepped back instinctively. "You destroy this family, and you'll regret it," he growled. "No, Dad. You destroyed this family when you decided one daughter was worth more than the other. You destroyed it when you forged Grandma's will. I'm just exposing what you did." Thomas Harrison appeared in the doorway then, right on cue. "Is everything all right in here?" "Who the hell are you?" my father demanded. "Thomas Harrison, private investigator. I'm the one who uncovered your forgery, and I'm here as a witness to this conversation, which I've been recording with Ms. Mitchell's permission." He held up his phone, which had been recording the entire confrontation. "I especially enjoyed the part where you called your daughter a bitch and threatened her with regret. The prosecutor will love that." My father looked like he might have a heart attack. My mother was crying silently. Victoria just sat there, her perfect Harvard Business School graduation ruined, staring at the documents in her hands. "You have a choice," I said to my father. "You can fight this. You can hire expensive lawyers, drag this out for years, and eventually lose because the evidence is ironclad. Or you can accept the real will, agree to divide the estate equally as Grandma wanted, and I'll ask the prosecutor to go easy on you. You might avoid jail time if you cooperate, but that mansion you just promised Victoria? It's going to be sold and split between us. That's non-negotiable. I'll never cooperate with you. My father spat. Then I'll see you in court. And Dad? I'm really, really good at my job. You're going to lose. I turned to leave, then paused. Oh, and Victoria, congratulations on your Harvard MBA. I'm sure it's very impressive. Almost as impressive as the Columbia Law degree you didn't know I had. I walked out of the conference room, Thomas following behind me. As we walked back across the lawn, I could hear shouting from inside the conference room. My father's voice, loud and angry. My mother crying. Victoria's panicked questions. How do you feel? Thomas asked. Free, I said. For the first time in my life, I feel free. The next 3 months were chaos. My father hired a team of defense attorneys, just as I predicted. He tried to argue that the real will was somehow invalid, that I had manipulated Grandma Martha, that the handwriting experts were wrong. But every argument fell apart under scrutiny. The evidence was too strong. 3 independent handwriting experts all confirmed the forgery. The witnesses Thomas had interviewed gave depositions. Grandma Martha's doctors testified about her mental state in her final months. The nurse who was supposed to have witnessed the fake will testified that my father had asked her to sign blank paperwork. And then there was the money. The prosecutor's office traced the $200,000 my father had withdrawn from Grandma's accounts. $20,000 had gone to a down payment on a luxury car for my father. $50,000 had been used to renovate my parents' home. $30,000 had been spent on Victoria's engagement party. The rest had been deposited into my father's personal accounts, little by little, probably hoping no one would notice. My father tried to claim it was all legitimate expenses, but the paper trail told a different story. He had been systematically stealing from his own mother while she lay dying, too sick to notice or protest. The forgery charges stuck. The embezzlement charges stuck. And while the elder abuse charges were harder to prove definitively, the combination of everything painted a clear picture of a man who had betrayed his mother's trust in the worst possible way. My father took a plea deal in the end. He lost his law license permanently. He was sentenced to 2 years in prison, though with good behavior he'd probably serve less. He was ordered to pay back the $200,000 plus interest and penalties. And he was barred from ever serving as executor or trustee of any estate again. My mother filed for divorce 3 weeks after the sentencing. She claimed she had no idea what my father was doing, though I didn't believe her. I think she knew, or at least suspected, but chose to look the other way because it benefited Victoria. Either way, she wanted to distance herself from the scandal. Victoria called me once during all of this. I was at my office working late on a client's trust restructuring when my phone rang with her number. What do you want? I answered. I need you to know I didn't know about the forgery, she said immediately. I swear, Sarah. I thought it was all legitimate. I thought Grandma really wanted me to have the mansion. Did you know about the money Dad was taking? Silence on her end. Victoria, did you know? I saw some things. Strange withdrawals. But Dad said it was all approved. He said Grandma wanted to help with my wedding expenses. So you took money from a dying woman and didn't question it. Don't you dare judge me. You weren't there. You never came to visit Grandma in those last months. I was in New York building a career while you were in Cambridge playing business student with stolen money. And I didn't visit because Dad made it clear I wasn't wanted. He controlled who got to see Grandma, remember? He made sure I was kept away. Victoria was crying now. This has destroyed everything. Bradley called off our engagement. He doesn't want to be associated with the scandal. My job offer at Goldman fell through because of the background check. My reputation is ruined. I should have felt sympathy for her. She was my sister, after all. But all I felt was cold satisfaction. Actions have consequences, I said. You spent your whole life benefiting from Mom and Dad treating me like garbage. You never once stood up for me. You enjoyed being the favorite. You looked down on me. So excuse me if I don't feel sorry for you now. I'm sorry, she whispered. For everything. For not being a better sister. For letting them treat you that way. I'm sorry. I appreciate that, I said. But sorry doesn't change anything. The estate is being divided equally, as Grandma wanted. The mansion is being sold. We'll each get about $6.5 million after taxes and legal fees. Use your money wisely, Victoria. Build a life without Mom and Dad propping you up. Learn what it's like to succeed on your own merit. Will you ever forgive me? I thought about that question. Forgiveness is complicated. Victoria had been complicit in my mistreatment through her silence, through her acceptance of favoritism, through her willingness to take everything while I got nothing. But she had also been shaped by the same toxic parents who shaped me. She had been taught that her worth came from being better than me, from being the favorite, from being praised. Maybe someday, I said honestly. But not today. Today I'm still angry. Today I'm still hurt. Today I'm celebrating the fact that I proved everyone wrong. So no, Victoria, I'm not ready to forgive you yet. She hung up without saying goodbye. The mansion sold for $13.2 million at auction. After legal fees, taxes, and various expenses, Victoria and I each received $6.4 million. I put most of mine in investments, following the advice of the financial planners at my firm. I did buy myself a nice apartment on the Upper West Side, though. 2 bedrooms, high ceilings, a view of the park. I furnished it with care, choosing every piece myself. It was mine, truly mine, earned by my work, not given to me because I was someone's favorite. I also set up a scholarship fund at SUNY Binghamton for students from families where they're not expected to succeed. Students who are underestimated. Students who are working 3 jobs to pay for school because their families won't help them. I called it the Martha Mitchell Scholarship, in honor of my grandmother who believed in equal opportunities. My career flourished after the case. Word got around the legal community about the young attorney who had taken down her own father for forgery. Some people thought I was ruthless. Others thought I was brave. Either way, clients started requesting me specifically. They wanted someone who wasn't afraid to dig deep, who wasn't afraid to challenge authority, who would fight tooth and nail to protect their interests. Michael Whitmore made me a junior partner 18 months after the case concluded. At 28 years old, I was one of the youngest partners in the firm's history. My name went on the door. Whitmore, Harrison, and Mitchell. Yes, Thomas Harrison had joined the firm as our in-house investigator. We made a good team. I never spoke to my father again after his sentencing. He tried to write to me from prison, letters full of justifications and excuses and half-hearted apologies. I burned them all without reading past the first paragraph. He had made his choices. Now he had to live with them. My mother reached out occasionally, usually around holidays. She wanted to rebuild our relationship, she said. She wanted me to understand that she had been misled by my father, that she loved both her daughters equally, that she was proud of what I had accomplished. I was polite, but distant. I sent cards on her birthday. I accepted her Facebook friend request. But I didn't invite her to my apartment. I didn't share details of my life. Trust, once broken so completely, is almost impossible to rebuild. Victoria moved to California after everything fell apart in New York. She got a job at a tech startup in San Francisco, something in marketing. She wasn't using her Harvard MBA to its full potential, but she was surviving. We emailed occasionally, stilted messages about nothing in particular. Maybe one day we would be able to sit in the same room without the weight of our past crushing us. But that day hadn't come yet. The strangest part of the whole experience was how people treated me differently once they knew the truth. Family members who had barely acknowledged me at Victoria's graduation suddenly wanted to get together for coffee. They wanted to hear my story, to marvel at how I had hidden my success for so long, to congratulate me on exposing my father's crimes. I declined most of these invitations. Where were these people when I was being called stupid at every family gathering? Where were they when my parents openly favored Victoria? They had been complicit through their silence, and I had no desire to pretend otherwise. But I did maintain relationships with a few family members who had always treated me kindly. My Aunt Diane, who had defended me more than once when my parents were particularly cruel. My cousin Marcus, who had always included me in conversations even when others ignored me. Grandma Martha's sister Helen, who told me stories about how proud Martha had been of me, How Martha had confided that she knew I was destined for great things. Your grandmother saw through your parents' favoritism, Aunt Helen told me over tea in her Brooklyn apartment. She knew what you were doing, hiding your achievements. She thought it was brilliant, actually. She said you were playing chess while everyone else was playing checkers. I smiled at that. It sounded like something Grandma Martha would say. She wanted to tell you about the real Will, Aunt Helen continued. She wanted you to know that she was protecting you, but she was afraid your father would find out and destroy it if she told anyone. So she made sure her old lawyer had a copy, and she hoped that would be enough. She trusted that you were smart enough to figure it out eventually. I almost didn't, I admitted. If my boss hadn't suggested I look into the will, if I hadn't hired Thomas, my father might have gotten away with it. But you did figure it out, because you're not the stupid one, Sarah. You never were. You're the clever one, the strategic one, the one who was patient enough to wait for the perfect moment to strike. That conversation stayed with me. My grandmother had believed in me even when I couldn't believe in myself. She had protected me from beyond the grave, and she had been right to trust that I would eventually uncover the truth. A year after the case was resolved, I was invited to speak at Columbia Law School about estate fraud and the importance of thorough document examination. I stood in front of a lecture hall full of law students and told them a version of my story, leaving out the personal details but focusing on the legal aspects. The lesson here, I concluded, is that you should never assume a document is legitimate just because it looks official. Always verify signatures. Always check the chain of custody. Always interview witnesses separately. And if something feels wrong, trust your instincts. In my case, those instincts uncovered a fraud that had fooled multiple lawyers and an entire family. After the lecture, students lined up to ask questions. One young woman, probably 23 or 24, waited until everyone else had left. Ms. Mitchell, she said nervously, I just wanted to thank you. My family treats me like I'm not as smart as my siblings. I'm the only one who went to law school instead of medical school, and they act like I'm a disappointment. Your story, it made me feel less alone. I looked at this young woman, saw myself in her uncertainty, and I felt something shift inside me. What's your name? I asked. Rachel. Rachel Chen. Rachel, let me tell you something. The people who underestimate you are giving you a gift, even if it doesn't feel that way. They're giving you the element of surprise. They're letting you work in peace while they dismiss you. Use that. Build your skills. Build your knowledge. Build your career. And then, when the time is right, show them exactly what you're capable of. You don't need their approval. You just need your own determination. She smiled, tears in her eyes. Thank you. And Rachel, when you make it, when you prove them all wrong, don't forget what it felt like to be underestimated. Use that empathy to help other people who are going through the same thing. That's how we change things. One person at a time. That interaction stayed with me too. I realized that my story wasn't just about revenge or proving my family wrong. It was about the universal experience of being underestimated, dismissed, overlooked. It was about finding strength in adversity and using that strength to build something meaningful. I started mentoring more junior attorneys at my firm, particularly women, and people from non-traditional backgrounds who felt like they had to work twice as hard to get half the recognition. I shared my strategies, my approaches to difficult cases, my techniques for commanding respect in rooms full of people who assumed I didn't belong there. And I volunteered with organizations that helped first-generation college students navigate higher education. I told them my story, the real story, about how I had hidden my achievements to protect myself from my family's toxicity. I told them it was okay to be strategic about who they shared their successes with. I told them that sometimes the people who should support you won't, and that's not a reflection of your worth. 2 years after everything happened, I ran into Bradley at a legal conference in Manhattan. He was the hedge fund manager who had been engaged to Victoria before the scandal broke. He recognized me immediately. Sarah Mitchell, he said, approaching me during a networking break. I've been hoping I'd run into you. Why? I asked warily. Because I owe you an apology. When everything came out about your father, I ended my engagement with Victoria. I told myself it was because I didn't want to be associated with the scandal. But the truth is, I was scared. Scared of being with someone whose family was that dysfunctional. I didn't think about how hard it must have been for Victoria, or for you, growing up in that environment. I just ran. I studied him. He seemed genuinely remorseful. Victoria deserved better than someone who would abandon her when things got difficult, I said. So while I appreciate the apology, you should probably be saying this to her, not me. I tried. She won't return my calls. Can't imagine why, I said dryly. He smiled sadly. Fair enough, but I also wanted to tell you that what you did was impressive. It took courage to stand up to your family like that, to expose the fraud, to demand justice. I work in finance, and I see families destroy themselves over money all the time. Most people just accept it, take whatever they're given, and move on. You didn't. You fought back. That takes guts. It takes anger, I corrected. Years and years of accumulated anger. I'm not sure it was courage so much as refusing to be a victim anymore. Maybe it was both. We talked for a few more minutes, exchanging business cards, promising to stay in touch professionally. I didn't tell him that Victoria was in California, that she had rebuilt her life away from New York. That was her story to share, not mine. But the encounter made me think about forgiveness again, about whether holding on to anger and hurt was serving me or just weighing me down. I had proven myself. I had gotten justice. I had received my rightful inheritance. At what point did continuing to shut out my family become more harmful to me than to them? I didn't have an answer. Some days I thought I would never forgive my parents for the way they treated me. Other days I thought maybe, eventually, I could find a way to let go of the bitterness. It was a process, I suppose. Healing always is. What I did know was that I was happy. Genuinely, truly happy. I loved my work. I loved my apartment. I loved the life I had built entirely on my own terms, without anyone's help or approval. I had good friends, colleagues who respected me, and a growing reputation as one of the best estate attorneys in New York. I was dating someone too, a professor of economics at NYU named Daniel. He was kind, intelligent, and most importantly, he had no idea who my family was or what had happened. To him, I was just Sarah, the brilliant attorney with the sharp mind and the slightly sarcastic sense of humor. He didn't see me through the lens of family drama or scandal. He just saw me. "You know what I love about you?" he said one evening, as we were having dinner at a small Italian restaurant in the village. "My winning personality?" I joked. "Your confidence. You know who you are. You know what you're worth. You don't need validation from anyone. It's incredibly attractive." If only he knew how hard-won that confidence was. How many years it took to build. How many times I had to prove myself before I truly believed in my own worth. But maybe that was okay. Maybe he didn't need to know every detail of my past. Maybe it was enough that I had gotten through it and come out stronger on the other side. 3 years after the case, I received an invitation in the mail. It was from Victoria. She was getting married, she wrote in an accompanying letter, to a software engineer she had met in San Francisco, someone who loved her for who she was, not for her Harvard degree or her family connections. She wanted me to come to the wedding. "I know I don't deserve your forgiveness," she wrote. "I know I've spent most of our lives being a terrible sister, but I'm trying to be better. I'm in therapy now, working through a lot of the toxic patterns Mom and Dad taught us. I'm learning to value people for who they are, not what they achieve. I'm learning that love shouldn't be conditional, and I'm learning that I missed out on knowing my sister because I was too busy being the favorite. I'd like to change that, if you're willing. Even if you don't come to the wedding, I hope we can talk sometime. I hope we can try to be sisters for real this time." I stared at that letter for a long time. Part of me wanted to throw it away, to maintain the distance I had carefully constructed between us. But another part of me, a smaller but persistent part, wondered if maybe Victoria deserved a chance. I called her number, the California one I had saved but never used. She answered on the second ring. "Sarah?" "Yeah, it's me." "Oh my God, I didn't think you'd call. I'm so glad you called." We talked for 2 hours that first time. Victoria told me about her life in California, about her job, about her fiancé James. She told me about therapy, about realizing how damaging our childhood had been for both of us, about learning to value herself beyond external achievements. I spent my whole life trying to be perfect because I thought that's what love was, she said. I thought if I got the best grades, the best schools, the best job, the best everything, then I would be worthy of love. It never occurred to me that real love isn't conditional like that. James loves me even when I'm a mess, even when I'm not perfect. It's terrifying and wonderful at the same time. I'm happy for you, I said, and I meant it. Will you come to the wedding, please? I know it's a lot to ask, but it would mean everything to me. I hesitated. Will Mom and Dad be there? Dad can't come. He's still on parole. He's not allowed to leave New York State. And Mom, I told her she could come only if she promised not to make it about herself, if she promised to be respectful to both of us. She agreed, but I honestly don't know if she'll keep that promise. I'll think about it, I said. No promises. But as the months passed and the wedding approached, I found myself leaning toward going. Not because I had completely forgiven Victoria, or was ready to rebuild our relationship to what it should have been, but because I was tired of letting anger dictate my choices. I was tired of cutting myself off from family, even flawed family, because of past hurts. So I flew to San Francisco for Victoria's wedding. It was a small ceremony in a garden overlooking the bay. Maybe 50 people. Nothing like the elaborate Harvard graduation reception. Victoria looked beautiful in a simple white dress, genuinely happy in a way I had never seen before. My mother was there, subdued and quiet. She hugged me when I arrived, whispered, "I'm so sorry for everything," in my ear. I hugged her back, but didn't say much. Some wounds take longer to heal than others. The ceremony was lovely. James seemed like a good man, someone who clearly adored Victoria. When they exchanged vows, Victoria cried and talked about how James had taught her what unconditional love meant, how he had shown her that she didn't have to be perfect to be worthy. At the reception, Victoria pulled me aside. "Thank you for coming. I know it wasn't easy." "No, it wasn't," I admitted, "but I'm glad I did." "I've been thinking a lot about Grandma Martha lately," Victoria said, "about how she loved us both equally, about how she tried to protect you even when Mom and Dad didn't. I wish I had been more like her. I wish I had stood up for you." "You can't change the past," I said, "but you can do better going forward. That's all any of us can do. I want to try. I want to be real sisters. Not perfect, but real. Can we try that?" I looked at my sister, really looked at her, and saw someone who was finally trying to break free of the same toxic patterns that had shaped both our lives. "Yeah," I said, "we can try that." It wasn't a fairy tale ending. Victoria and I didn't become best friends overnight. We didn't erase decades of dysfunction with one conversation, but we started talking regularly, carefully rebuilding something that had never really existed before. A genuine sisterly relationship. My mother remained at arm's length. I couldn't fully trust her after years of being dismissed and watching her enable my father's favoritism, but I didn't shut her out completely either. We had lunch occasionally, safe conversations about neutral topics. It was the best we could manage. My father I never saw again after his sentencing. He served 14 months in prison and was released on parole. I heard through family gossip that he was working at a small legal aid office now, doing document review. His reputation was destroyed. His license was gone. His marriage was over. The man who had once seemed so powerful and important was reduced to barely scraping by. I didn't take pleasure in his downfall, but I didn't mourn it either. He had made his choices. Actions have consequences. The real victory wasn't in my father going to prison, or in getting my share of the inheritance. The real victory was in proving to myself that I had never been the stupid one, that I had always been capable, intelligent, strategic, that the only thing holding me back had been other people's perceptions. And once I stopped caring about those perceptions, there was no limit to what I could achieve. 5 years after the case, I made full partner at my firm. My name on the door was changed to just Mitchell, as I had earned it independently. I was handling some of the largest estate cases in New York, representing clients whose wealth was measured in billions. I was respected, sought after, successful. I bought a weekend house in the Berkshires, a place where I could escape the city and think. Daniel moved in with me officially, and we talked about getting married eventually, though neither of us was in a rush. Life was good. Life was stable. Life was mine. And sometimes when I was sitting on my porch in the Berkshires, watching the sunset over the mountains, I would think about Grandma Martha, about how she had protected me even after her death, about how she had believed in me when no one else did, about how her love had been the one constant in a childhood full of variables. "I did it, Grandma," I would whisper to the wind. "I proved them all wrong. I showed them who I really am. I hope you're proud." And in my heart, I knew she was. This story teaches us that being underestimated by those who should support us can either break us or forge us into something stronger than we ever imagined. When people dismiss your potential based on their own prejudices and preferences, they're not seeing your true worth. They're revealing their own limitations. Sometimes the greatest gift toxic people give us is the motivation to prove them wrong, not for their validation, but for our own self-realization. True success isn't measured by whether the people who doubted you finally believe in you. It's measured by whether you believe in yourself enough to build the life you deserve, with or without their approval. The people who underestimate you are making a bet that you'll internalize their low expectations. The most powerful thing you can do is prove that bet wrong. Families that play favorites create hierarchies based on arbitrary measures of worth, teaching children that love must be earned through achievement rather than given freely. But these toxic dynamics often backfire in unexpected ways. The favorite child may grow up dependent on external validation, struggling with identity and self-worth. Meanwhile, the overlooked child, forced to develop internal strength and resilience, often emerges more capable and self-sufficient. The very act of being underestimated becomes training in independence, strategy, and self-reliance. Have you ever been in a situation where your family underestimated you while praising a sibling, only for you to prove them wrong later? Share your story in the comments below. And if you believe in fighting for what's rightfully yours, and never letting others define your worth, give it a like and subscribe for more stories like this. Let me know where you're watching from.